welcome. India's gross domestic product GDP for the April to June quarter of the ongoing financial year, that's fiscal year 2021 to 22, expanded 20.1%. As per data released on Tuesday, that's yesterday, the sharp rise in quarterly one GDP data can be attributed to a low base last year. In the April to June quarter of 2020, the economy contracted 24.4% due to the COVID-19 lockdowns. The economy grew by 1.6% for quarterly 4 of fiscal year 21 after showing contraction for the first 2 quarters and turning slightly positive in quarterly 3. What do these figures mean? What are they indicative of? And how do they relate to a robust economy, an economy that's bouncing back, can we say? All these questions and more in the next 1 hour with our distinguished guests. But first, there's a report we have for you. Let me introduce our guests for today. They are Arvind Virmani, Chairman, EGROW and former CEA, and Vidisha Ganguly, Chief Economist of the CII. Well, as I was telling you, after the COVID slump, India recorded its best ever quarterly GDP growth at 20.1% in the first quarter of this year. With business activities rebounding to pre-pandemic levels, the GDP growth was on the higher side. Here's more.
India's economy has begun to show signs of recovery in the first quarter of the year. The GDP of the country stood at Rs 32,38,000 crore in the April to June quarter. Compared to last year's first quarter, the GDP is 20.1% higher. It is worth noting that a decline of 24.4% was recorded in the same quarter last year amidst the lockdown owing to the pandemic, when the GDP was at 26.95 lakh crores. Economic development gained momentum after speedy COVID vaccinations. Currently, 4.5% have been vaccinated against 4.7% last year. Recovery in agriculture has been better than pre-pandemic, while recovery level of manufacturing is at 96%.
Pre-COVID level इस साल pre-COVID level से ज़्यादा ही आएगा, और जिस तरह के आंकड़े आए हैं इससे हम अनुमान लगा सकते हैं कि जो हमने इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में जो प्रेडिक्शन दिया था और बजट में जो प्रेडिक्शन था वो इस बार आना चाहिए। इस साल में जिस तरह की पहले तिमाही में जो आंकड़े आए हैं उससे लग रहा है कि जो हमारा अनुमान था बजट के समय, वो अनुमान एक्चुअली सही होना चाहिए। तो ग्रोथ के संदर्भ में तो एक्चुअली जो प्री पैंडेमिक उससे ज्यादा ग्रोथ इस साल आनी चाहिए और आगे बढ़ के भी आनी चाहिए।
There are many figures on the economic front which indicate a recovery. An increase of up to 18% in energy consumption and production in the country has been recorded. Monthly GST collection recorded beyond an average of 1 lakh crore. Freight, e-toll collection and auto sales figures have reached pre-COVID level. The growth of sales in the corporate sector is the best recorded in 5 years. NPAs of banks were seen at 2.3% level in March, and net profit stood at 31,816 crores. FDI investment in 2020 crossed $80 billion and FPI investment exceeded $36.2 billion. There are also signs of relief regarding inflation. Retail inflation rate hit a 3-month low. According to the Finance Ministry, structural reforms, accelerating government investment in infrastructure, recovery in the banking sector and rapid COVID vaccinations have provided the necessary support to the economy, thus giving clear indications of the growth rate stabilizing by next year. With Ajay Kumar Mishra, Bureau Report, DD India.
And to discuss more on this, as we told you earlier, we have with us Mr. Arvind Virmani and Vidisha Ganguly. A very warm welcome to both our guests. Coming to you, Mr. Virmani, sir, your reactions to the new GDP numbers.
So, before the second wave hit, we were expecting a growth rate of more than compensating the previous minus 24%, but because of the second wave, the recovery is slightly slower than we had thought before the second wave. So in that sense, if we take the two together, certainly it is on expectations. But of course, there are two, so as I said, what we expected before second wave and the second wave. So how do we look at it now? The issue is that what our analysis has shown is that though Q1, which data we just now have, will be lower than we had thought before the second wave, the Q2 numbers will surprise on the upside. So they will make up a significant proportion of what we lost during the second wave. And further in the second half of the year, more of this will be made up. So that overall for the year, the depressing effect of the second wave will be almost made up, and will be close to what we had forecast as early as October of last year at around 10%, but maybe with a little downside risk, which compares with the 9.5% forecast of RBI. So that is within our range, and we still expect that to happen. So to just conclude the overall picture before getting into the details of agriculture, etc.
Yes.
This data is more or less confirms our forecast, which of course is not true of many other people who have been presenting a negative picture of the economy.
Right. So Vidisha, we've just heard Mr. Virmani, who's been a former CEA, speak. From your point of view, from an economist's point of view, would you agree with the current CEA's view that the GDP data for the first quarter, it reaffirms the government's prediction of an imminent V-shaped recovery that was made last year? Because we are looking at these figures as the economy bouncing back.
Expectation. So the key thing here is to compare with the number 2 years ago, because last year was very bad. So there is a base effect, and that will naturally make this year's number look good. But if we compare it to 2 years ago, we are still down by about 9.2%. So going forward, the key thing in the first quarter, we had the second wave. And so therefore it is to be expected that the number will be down. But going forward, the important thing is that compared to 2 years ago, we should start showing positive growth. And that is something that we expect based on the feedback that we get from the CEOs who are our members. In fact, we recently, CII had a poll in which most people expected very strong recovery in revenue, sales, and in capacity utilization over the second, third, and fourth quarters. In fact, I think the second half of the year will be particularly good, where you will see positive growth compared to 2 years ago. And as a result, the full year growth will then become around that 9.5 to 10% number that the CEA and the RBI have projected. And it will certainly be, the GDP will be higher than what it was 2 years ago. Right.
Mr. Virmani, Chief Policy Advisor, Mr. Srivastav, has written in a comment that the positive news from the output side came from the agricultural and electricity, gas, water supply sectors, which did relatively well as compared to even their first quarter 2019 to 2020 levels. Do you agree with that analysis?
So since the new year started, as I said, the negative shock, of course, was the second wave. But on the positive side, the two key things which stand out is agriculture and exports. So agriculture growth of 4.5% coming on the heels of 3.5 last year, of course, it is very encouraging. And part of the reason is something, again, we had pointed out when people were being very pessimistic about agriculture in the beginning of the year, was that global prices of agricultural production is good. And unlike last year, when there was a huge increase in supply, and the prices got depressed. So in this year, not only was the production expected to be good, but the prices that farmers are getting is good. So we had argued that the farmers' agitation is kind of artificial, because agriculture is actually going to do much better even than last year, which has come out. I must say it's a little bit of a positive surprise, but not that much. One would have maybe expected 3.5% again, but it's 4.5. So certainly that is a pleasant and a good surprise, which will also have positive effects on the incomes of the large majority of people. The poor live in rural areas, etc., many migrants have had to go back to the rural areas. So all that will have other positive implications. And the second one is exports, where again, I have been pointing out that some of this diversification of supply chains and moving of demand from China to India is happening. I've been getting direct information. Of course, it's shown up in the GDP data and the balance of payments data for the last few months. But this export growth, I have been pointing out for at least 2 months that a large part of this is this shift in the supply chains. The supply chain diversification is happening. Of course, some of it is temporary, no doubt about it. But I think the export growth is going to be hold up some of the the counter the negative effects we still expect from the contact services. So again, we can get into that when looking at the future. But I think these two factors are very positive, and even though I'm not fully surprised, but a little bit of a pleasant upside surprise.
Right. Well, Bidisha, when we look at the GDP growth figures, they've been quite steady for the past few years, since 2016, can we say. Now, when economists tell us that GDP at current prices in the first quarter 2021 to 22 is estimated at 51.23 lakh crore rupees, as against 38.89 lakh crore rupees in the first quarter of 2020 to 21. What does it basically mean? What does it translate to in terms of, say, our ease of living, in terms of, what does it basically mean in layman's terms?
Sure. So this is GDP as measured at current prices. Unlike what we were talking about when we said there is a 20% growth, that was at constant prices, which means that we are not looking at any price increase. However, this 51 lakh crore GDP is actually the total income in the country, or total domestic production in the country. It is a sort of a proxy for total income. So for example, if you divide that by the total population, you get an approximation of the per capita income. Not exactly, there are some other adjustments to be made, but approximately I'm saying. So this, for the layman, it should be taken as an indication of the overall income in the country. So in fact, this 51 lakh crore, if you see, is actually higher than what the level was 2 years ago. This is what I was talking about. Although in real terms, that is correcting for price increases, our GDP is lower than what it was 2 years ago. But in current price terms, it is actually already higher than what it was 2 years ago. So we are on the right track in terms of overall income growth.
Right. And
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I would just add, that like she said, that the public looks at it this way. In some ways, you can relate this to the stock market, because they are looking at the nominal price of stocks,
Yes.
what we call, in current prices. So, it's important. I think a point was made also that the nominal GDP is now higher than it was in 2019. Though in real terms, as economists, we look at real terms. But I think the public, including, in fact, in the stock market, some of that is being reflected there, because they look at the nominal demand for their goods and services which are being supplied by the companies which are listed on the stock exchanges.
so, Mr. Virmani, if you were the CEA now, you would look at this as these figures as being very positive, as something you could work with.
Yeah, so we already have, I think, it kind of sets the baseline. As I said, we expected, Q1 to be a little below what we had been thinking about, let's say in March, what everybody was expecting in March. But in some sense, it sets a floor. So there were a range of people. I mean, I was not one of them, but there were many people who were very pessimistic about the second wave and expecting a disaster for the economy. So certainly, those people will be reassured. And that will have an effect on the overall economy. Certainly, everybody doesn't listen to me or the current CEA. But so those people who were scared that there's going to be a disastrous quarter one will be reassured, and it will have a general effect on risk reduction and the positive view of consumers, for example, or investors, etc. So in that sense, it's very good that now we have a number, and so there's no need for this irrational fears. So that will have a positive effect.
Right, definitely positive, no more irrational fears, says former CA Mr. Virmani. And Vidisha, when we talk about measures that the government has taken in the recent past, one of them, can we say, is the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, the nearly 30 lakh crore package that was announced in order to boost employment, in order to boost economic growth.
Yes, if you look at the impact of these packages, I think actually the impact will come in the quarters going forward. It is not so much visible in the first quarter. In fact, government expenditure seems to have gone down in the GDP data. So I expect that in the coming quarters that will have a significant impact. And also the capital spending of the government is likely to go up further, as the finance minister has stressed, and that will have a positive impact. The other things that I'd like to just mention is, one is that global growth itself has been quite strong, and that is why we have had such a good export performance. Of course, we have been prepared to take advantage of this higher growth globally, also higher trade growth, by the diversification in the supply chains, as mentioned by Dr. Virmani. So that is something that is likely to continue, though there might be some logistical issues that will come up from time to time. For example, last month we heard that there was a port in China which was stopped because of the virus which happened there, but then it has been opened now. So there will be some variation, but overall I think exports will continue to grow well. The other area where we've done very well is vaccination, which was again slow in the initial period, but seems to have picked up very rapidly now. So if we are able to vaccinate our, a large proportion of our adult population by the end of this year, I think we can open up much more. And that is the other factor which I think will really push growth over the coming quarters.
Right. Well, Dr. Virmani, regarding the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, we are expecting to see more and more positive results the further we move from the date of announcement. Would you like to add something?
Yeah. So let me go back to the budget. I was invited to the pre-budget discussion with the PM and Finance Minister and all that. And basically what we had said and what the government actually did, whatever the reasons, was to focus on reviving investment. So capital expenditures in the budget were increased by 34%. There was a thrust to getting infrastructure back on track, etc. Because the CA and we had also said that this will have a bigger multiplier effect. Now you actually see that in the results. It's not just the future. If you look at the gross fixed capital formation, that is actually higher than 2019. So though private investment is low because capacity utilization is still not up to 70-80%, but the government expenditures on capital goods were a direct conscious decision of the government, which we supported, which is actually having an effect, because that is actually what is holding up part of it. We mentioned agriculture, but and exports, but the GFCF is also because everybody knows that the private sector is not investing. So we are concluding, we don't have I don't have a direct division between government and private capital expenditures, but that must be due to the government's policy. So in that sense, we call it Atmanirbhar or whatever, that is already having an effect, and this will continue. But one is hopeful that now that the economy is looking up, and what I said about the risk reduction and the unjustified fears, we should begin to see in the second half of the year a revival also of private investment.
Right. When we talk about revival and when we talk about the union budget, Vidisha, Dr. Virmani mentioned that among the measures, the stress we feel has been on broad-based and inclusive economic development. The 34.5% increase in capital expenditure that Dr. Virmani spoke about, that you just mentioned as well, and the 137% increase in health expenditure, as health becomes a major focus, especially under Prime Minister Modi.
Yes, certainly. That is why under health, one thing was vaccine, and I mentioned that vaccination has really picked up, which was not happening earlier. But one of the Atmanirbhar measures was to allocate money for vaccination, and I think now finally the supply issues have been taken care of. Now, going to the next stage, we will really need to take care of building our health infrastructure and increasing our health spend as a percentage of GDP. I think we need to move it up to at least 2 to 3%, which is not there now. And for that, every district needs to have sufficient capacity to handle patients of different kinds, not just COVID patients. Of course, initially we also need to step up things like oxygen availability at the local level. So this is something that the states will also have to work. The states and district administrations will have to work at a rapid pace, and the central government has made funds available for this increase in health spending.
Right. Well, Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian interacted with us last evening. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
There is the base effect, because there was a decline of almost 24% last year, so the base effect is manifesting. But what is important to keep in mind is that both years, last year and this year, the first quarter has been impacted by the pandemic. Last year, the first quarter was impacted by the first wave of the pandemic, and this year, the second wave, which was far more intense. And therefore, in that context, clearly, it is an apples-to-apples comparison. I would say that some of the impact on the supply side, the measures that have been taken are being seen, as I covered in the presentation. Inflation, for instance, has been a little more than 6%. If you compare the inflation after the global financial crisis, when we had inflation in double digits, despite no supply side restrictions then, unlike the ones that have been created by lockdowns and restrictions, etc. I think that is indicative that the supply side measures are bearing fruit. At the same time, the fiscal spending that has been done, I think is showing its impact, because the corporate sector, for instance, has actually shown very good performance. It has emerged with much higher profitability and has also deleveraged significantly, and thereby is investing. We've seen that the gross fixed capital formation in the economy has grown at 55%. That is basically investment by the private sector. So I think while there is a base effect, but at the same time, the impact of the recovery driven by the measures that have been taken by the government is undeniably also important. When we talk about macroeconomy, 3 or 4 very key indicators have to be tracked. One is inflation, second is fiscal deficit, third is the current account deficit. At the same time, the overall currency reserves, the external debt to GDP, all these. And as I've shown in the presentation, inflation at 6.1% on average over the last year is a clear 3 percentage points lower than in the first year after the global financial crisis. Do remember that inflation accelerated even further into double digits after the global financial crisis. In contrast, we expect a moderation of inflation now. So that's the first metric. Second, if you recall, the current account deficit, which was actually, in deficit about 2.22% in the first year after GFC, went close to 5%, which was really very, very high levels, alarming levels. In contrast, we've had a current account surplus this time last year. At the same time, if you look at the fiscal deficit as well, India, has managed its fisc very well. This has been a period where every country has done a lot on fiscal policy, and India has done that as well. But at the same time, has actually really targeted its expenditure very well. And has also implemented significant reform. I think if there's one key difference that stands out, it was the absolute lack of any reforms following the global financial crisis, compared to the tremendous amount of reforms that have been implemented over the last year and a half. I think all these together have ensured that inflation is, is in control and will come down further. Current account deficit, we don't expect it to be, to be high at all. Should be less than 2%, and fiscal deficit is manageable as well. So the three key indicators, all of them are good. If you look at FDI and FPI, there were FPI outflows. Now there's almost 38 billion FDI inflow that has happened last year. FDI is 10 times as high compared to the global financial crisis. So across all the indicators, plethora of them are clearly showing that our macro fundamentals are far better because our policy has been much more, spot on compared to the really poor policy during the global financial crisis.
Well, CEA KV Subramanian there talking about the GDP figures, their indications. We are discussing the same in our show In Focus, but now it's time for a short break, after which we'll be right back, so stay tuned.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD India.
Welcome back after the break. You're watching In Focus, and we are talking about the GDP numbers announced by the government yesterday, an increase of 20.1%, and the indicators are all in the positive direction, as if you are to believe the Chief Economic Advisor. And to discuss this, we have with us on our show two eminent economists, former Chief Economic Advisor Dr. Arvind Subramanian and Chief Economist of the CII, Bidisha Ganguly. Well, Dr. Virmani, when we were just listening to the CEA, and there were various indicators that he mentioned. Just as you were mentioning before that, he was talking about the fiscal deficit and also about the monetary policy support. That is one factor that most experts are talking about as something that will need the government's help in terms of releasing the protectionist stance it has. Perhaps you mentioned exports. Do you feel that that is a very prominent and important point that will determine the figures as in the days ahead?
Yeah, there were several important points which the CA made. One was on macro stability, the other on structural reforms, and the third on foreign investors, FDI, etc. But before I come to all these, because each one, a very small point connected to your previous, because that is the one negative or doubt we still have, is that the private consumption is slow to pick up, and part of that is related to the health issue which you raised. So,
yes.
So people are still fearful, the contact services are a problem. People are afraid to spend because some of them have been affected by the health problems and concerns of the second wave, etc. And this is being reflected in the consumer confidence surveys. But again, that risk factor which I mentioned, the vaccination, which Ms. Ganguly has mentioned, these things I think now will start to improve that sentiment over the next couple of months. But of course, we have to see that. Now, coming to the positive ones, the 3 points which Subramaniam made was one is macro stability. Absolutely correct. I think the economy has been managed well in terms of making the trade-offs, etc. So the macro economy is stable. Then right through these 18 months, nobody has had the feeling that it may go out of whack and therefore have a negative effect, on current or future prospects. So that is very clear. That's a positive thing. The second one, the structural reforms. Again, this is something our early research suggested was that the best way to improve the sentiments, because we were in a lockdown and there were a lot of these other uncertainties, and we had suggested that just throwing money, fiscal, because the whole world was measuring, they've given a stimulus of 10%, 20%, 30%, and everybody was saying, we are doing only so much, and so on. But our research had suggested that they must be targeted, etc. And see, as the CEA said, the government did exactly that. It targeted its fiscal stimulus carefully. You mentioned monetary policy, the credit policy. This is something that we suggested not just in our research papers, but in our interaction with the governor also. So this structural reform, because the big problem we saw, which had its origin in 2019, when the animal spirits, the expectations had been damaged by certain actions before, we said that a structural reform must happen, and the CA is absolutely right. The amount of reforms we have done in the last 18-20 months is probably unprecedented. No other country has done so much reforms during this pandemic period. So that is a positive, and it's also being reflected in the sentiments of the foreign investors. So these two things together are having a positive impact on the foreign investors, and you're beginning to see that reflected in the FDI figures which you mentioned. But just one extra thing beyond that is also the digital economy. So it's not only, obviously the structural reforms don't act immediately, their effects we will see out over the next year or two or even longer, but the pickup in the digital economy, I think, is adding to this sentiment, digital India, connectivity, and again, the government has been a little slow in connecting the rural areas, but I think that pace is picking up. The government has now announced that PPP program for connecting the villages, etc., an excellent solution to the slowness with which the connectivity was going into the rural areas. So that whole flowering of social entrepreneurship, e-learning, e-health, etc., which is happening over the last 6 months, is actually adding to this positive sentiment, both domestically and internationally. And we are going to see, partly because of this, the private investment is now going to pick up fairly quickly, much more quickly than many people had expected. But it won't be only in the hard, things which we normally look at, the things which appear in the data we normally collect. Because if you remember, digital economy actually, they call it burn. So it's not as if you're buying a whole bunch of machines or construction, it's a burn. So the investment goes into burn up because you're building up intellectual capital, right? So you're spending money. You can't see that intellectual capital. It won't appear in your accounting, but it's also investment. So that is going to pick up very quickly now over the next 6 months.
Right. So, Bidisha, would you, how would you like to elaborate on that? Because, well, among the major indicators that the chief economic advisor spoke about, one was inflation. Inflation is doing pretty well, And yet on the other hand, we are seeing that among the many sectors that showed a rise, surprisingly it was construction that perhaps did very well.
Right. So inflation is very critical, and in fact that is why there is a section of people who are saying that the RBI should now start tightening monetary policy because inflation has gone up, especially the CPI on a couple of months, a few months, it went up beyond the 6% limit that the RBI has. Of course, the WPI, which is the wholesale price index, has gone up even more because there is a much greater weight on commodities in the WPI. So, as the CEA mentioned, actually, if you look at it over a longer period of time, CPI has been moderate compared to the post financial crisis period. So there will be ups and downs because there has been such a big shock to the system when the from the supply side, we have had all manufacturing shut down for a period of time. So when it is reopening, there will be demand supply imbalances, which will lead to a shock in inflation. And even though we have opened up now quite widely, even globally, there are a lot of demand supply mismatches. Like I mentioned earlier, there are logistical issues, which is leading to increase in inflation. Of course, you have to look at different sectors also. On food, for example, there is an increase in global food prices, and that is an overall trend, so that will feed into our prices. Fuel also, oil prices have been consistently going up. But should the RBI respond to shocks in these specific segments? I think not. And that is what the RBI is also doing, unless there is a widespread increase in demand, of which there is no indication right now. The RBI should hold on to the monetary policy that it is currently pursuing. And that has also been the global trend. If you see the US Fed, it has been expanding, it has maintained an expansionary stance despite rising inflation.
Right. Well, all indicators are very positive, and economists tell us that, well, although there are many other steps that can be taken, so far so good. The economy grew by 1.6% for quarterly 4 of fiscal year 21 after showing contraction for the first 2 quarters and turning slightly positive in quarter 3. Let's listen in as the Chief Economic Advisor spoke to us on this. Let's listen in to what he had to say. I'd just like to ask my producer to, well, we seem to be now among the measures, Dr. Virmani, that the government introduced, many of them were in kind, such as food, cooking gas and cash transfers to vulnerable sections. We are talking about a time when there were lockdowns, when there was very less economic activity, yet we see a sudden rebound in the economy. How would you explain that?
There are 2 issues. As I mentioned structural reform, which I can come back to, but you mentioned food. So one important element which was there that in the lockdown, the previous lockdown, and to a smaller extent in the second wave one, many people, get affected in the second wave also because of health reasons, for family members getting ill, etc. So it was very important to have basic, basic to make sure that everybody had the basics to survive. And the government chose because the food route, because there is already a PDS system in place, so it was easier to just say, okay, we will give free food of so much to anybody who needs it. And of course, this period after the second wave started has been extended further. Earlier it was intended for the year of the first wave, and now because of the second wave, it's been extended. Now, but there are medium-term issues which we have been pointing out, but perhaps government is going step by step. So what we had suggested was that a direct cash transfer system which put money directly into the hands of people, through a cell phone, would be better, because the migrants, for example, were moving, etc., etc. So government introduced this one ration, one nation, one ration. So they're going about it, I guess, gradually, because it was thought a little administratively difficult. But yeah, by and large, it's been managed, that at least provide this safety net.
Right, talking about migrant workers, there was a Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan, then also increased allocation under Manrega, credit guarantee and equity infusion based relief measures for micro, small and medium industries. Bidisha, all these measures, can they be counted? Are economists counting these measures as measures that have boosted GDP, or how are economists looking at it? Because this was an unprecedented time, calling for unprecedented measures. Ours was perhaps one of the few countries, not to speak of the more advanced countries in the West, ours was one of the few countries that was handling the lockdown in this manner.
Yes. So these measures were meant to protect the people, the weaker sections of society, so that they should not really fall. Of course, because of the pandemic, there has possibly been an increase in the poverty levels. So the government needed to protect these people so that their incomes do not fall very much lower than what they were before the pandemic, or at least provide the support that they need in terms of food, in terms of basic income that is needed. So yes, they will ultimately have an impact on GDP, but I think one should look at it from the humanitarian perspective, that to stop hunger, for example, to provide basic jobs through the employment guarantee, and that has really had a positive effect. I believe that the Narega jobs, for example, the demand for those jobs has been moderating over the last few months, which means that there are other jobs available. And even the job index that is created by CMI, that is showing a decline in the unemployment rate in the last few months.
Right. And Bidisha, as Dr. Virmani had mentioned, the digitization of perhaps every aspect of our lives, that was the way that was managed even before the pandemic struck. As the Prime Minister exhorting people to have Jan Dhan accounts, to have Aadhaar accounts, to have to go in for cashless transfers. Well, did that make all the difference as far as our economy was concerned?
I think that made a tremendous amount of difference. So we were prepared for this through the digitization. Many other countries started their digitization effort after the pandemic, but here we were totally prepared with the Jan Dhan accounts and the Aadhaar card, as you mentioned, so that it was easy to transfer money into people's accounts. Much more needs to be done on that account, but things like in the health side, for vaccination as well. Yes. The CoWIN has been hugely beneficial in implementing the vaccination, and anyone can really get an appointment today with the CoWIN app. So the penetration of digitization, the card payments, everything available on the net. In fact, consumption would have slumped even more had we not had the facility of making digital payments. If you see the amount of digital payments, they have been steadily going up. The RBI has also created an index of digital payments because it's become so important now, not just at the lower end of the population, but at the higher end as well. A lot of investments are coming into the digital space. Private equity as well as conventional equity, and many new companies are getting seeded every day. In fact, a lot of the money that was going into China is now coming into India in the digital space. So not only in manufacturing but also in the digital space, we are getting a lot of new investments coming in.
Right, we'll be coming back to our discussion right now, but first, as I was telling you earlier, let's listen in to the CEA and what he said in his interaction with us last evening.
I would say this year actually growth, will be significantly higher than potential. In the coming year, which is FY23, we expect growth to be between 6.5 to 7%. That is actually close to the pre-pandemic potential. But going forward, I expect the potential growth to actually increase because of the several reforms that have been implemented. And so from FY24 onwards, I expect growth to be above 7%. And I do think that the growth potential would be closer to 7.5%, post-pandemic and post the recovery because of the significant reforms, the path-breaking reforms that have been implemented over the last 1 year. Broadly, services is one sector where the revival needs to happen significantly more. If you recall, the Purchasing Managers Index for services had come into the expansionary territory in the fourth quarter, but then because of the impact of the second wave, it is again in a contractionary zone. Though it has improved, in the month of July. I think overall services and especially contact-based services, those are the two sectors that I think where there is significant potential for improvement. And I think the accelerating phase of vaccination will really help in that regard. And I think as the phase of vaccination accelerates and any fears of a third wave are hopefully not fructified, that will really help in the acceleration of activity in the contact-based services and thereby overall services itself. So I would mark out the services and especially contact-based services as a sector where improvement, significant improvement is still possible.
Right. Well, see KV Subramanian there, Dr. Virmani, he's also mentioned about vaccination, and I have the figures here. Last year, they are 24.5%, around nearly 25% this year as compared to 4.7 last year. As you were saying, a tremendous growth, and that has made all the difference. Now, one point that the CEA mentioned was, and which we'd like your analysis of, is the growth predictions that he has made.
So let me start with the services question,
yes,
and then come to the conclusion on the GDP.
Yes.
The big thing which India has done is what I call public goods infrastructure in the digital economy. So Ms. Ganguly has already gone into the details, but what I would mention is that a little more needs to be done on the regulatory system, which needs to be integrated and professionalized. There are little things happening. There's a privacy law, etc. But I think we have a huge potential in the digital economy, and if we get these two pieces and integrate the system, we can actually become the leaders in this field. So that's one thing I would, and that will also show up in how quickly we do this will show up in the growth rate over the next 18 months, 2 years and further. Now, on the second element, very important, is what we call the contact services. Now, here they are basically, the businesses themselves can do a very important role. I just mentioned, yesterday or over the last weekend was the first time I went out, and I was very impressed that the two things they are asking were, the good hotels, for example, or a good mall or something, they're asking for a vaccination certificate. And I was very impressed that the Setu app, which I have, they told me to open it and they put it into a machine and they could immediately see that I was vaccinated and I could go into the place. And the second one, all of them are saying, please be masked. So if every contact service does that and enforces it, these services will recover much faster. So that's the second. And so finally on the GDP forecast, actually the CA is rightly being cautious. I think he says for the next fiscal year, not the one we are in, but the next year he said 6.5 to 7. I would say 7 or higher.
Okay.
And as I said, my confidence comes from the fact of the reforms. what has impressed over the last 18 months is that the government is systematically looking at. That doesn't mean they've covered 100% of the space, but they are going one by one in every sector, in every area, and seeing what are the impediments. And they are open to business. I'm sure Ms. Badesha Ganguly can tell you more, but they are going now is something we had also suggested from our own experience, that talk to the people who actually have to cope with these regulations. You know, a person like me can give macro reform ideas, but to get into the nitty-gritty and details which affects the ease of doing business, the ease of regulatory compliance, you have to talk to the people who actually have to work and implement these. So what impresses me is they are going about it systematically, and eventually, and this is gradually beginning to be known to the business. You know, I have been involved in reform, so I know what is happening. But many people, you know, including domestic, some investors globally, they will gradually learn this. And I think the FY23 GDP growth is going to be higher. It's going to be above 7% in my view.
Right. Vidisha, I would have liked to talk to you about the services sector as well. However, since we are running out of time, I'd like to touch upon one very important sector that we haven't talked about in detail as yet, but which we definitely need to, and that's agriculture. Well, everybody is saying that the government's policies in this regard over the past few months have made a huge difference. For instance, increasing institutional credit to farmers, promoting scientific warehousing. However, when we look at the ground reality, what would you say about the impact this has had? Because these measures are still in the early stages.
Yeah, so if I may, I will just respond to Dr. Virmani's point once on regulatory issues. Yes. Where there is a huge need for government to consult with industry, because we still have very high cost of doing business. Other than ease of doing business, also the cost of doing business remains high due to issues such as logistics costs, power costs, where industry is charged at a higher rate, and this affects our competitiveness. So if we have to become an export hub, we need to be competitive compared to our competitors. So the government does consult us, but we need to really do a deep dive to look at why these issues are not getting sorted out. On agriculture, I would say that yes, the government has done a lot, but at the same time, we still remain a country that is dependent on the monsoons. So this year, for example, the monsoons have been varying a lot. It was good initially, then there was a dry period, and then again it is resumed. So this has an impact on agriculture, and therefore I'm not confident that agriculture will do well. Maybe in terms of incomes, yes, but there will be pockets where of good growth and pockets of bad growth. So that is something that we need to look at in greater detail. So irrigation is, again, public investment in irrigation is very, very critical to be spread across the country.
Right. Dr. Virmani?
Sorry, on what question?
Right. When we talk about the agriculture sector, a lot more needs to be done in that respect. Yeah. Would you agree?
So it's very important to remember that, the states have about 4 sectors which they are responsible for, and agriculture and irrigation is one of them. I think it's a misdirection to expect the center to do everything. As I said, there are the only 3 or 4 sectors actually, if you count them on the fingers, where they are close to exclusive responsibility. And I think we must hold the states accountable for at least these 4 sectors, and so agriculture is one of them. But from a macro perspective, from the central government's perspective, really there are 2 or 3 things which have been badly neglected. One is research and development. It used to be a big thing, and connected to it the extension services. So, so these 2 things, which used to be the center of our agricultural program in the Green Revolution, etc., have been forgotten by everybody, including the agricultural state. So I think, given that the digital economy is now coming in, so for example, what I have recommended is making an agricultural stack where everything connected with agriculture is available to the farmers in one place, whether it's the new results, management practices, where to get inputs, outputs, a digital portal or a stack which makes it easier for farmers, younger farmers who can access it. And of course, connectivity to the villages and rural areas will be critical for that because they can't access it. So these two things, acceleration of the connectivity of villages and rural areas to the fiber network, and secondly, some kind of a stack where it's easier. You know, the thing about information is unless you know about the information, you don't know what to look for. So what the stack can do is make it easy. A farmer says, oh, I have a problem of this. He can go to this, enter it, and the search engine should be able to say, okay, go and look at this. So again, using the digital economy to promote agriculture would be very helpful. For example, what was just mentioned, that the monsoon picked up, it went down, picked up. That solution should have been available to, okay, what do you do under such a condition? You go, you say, go to the stack and it'll give you some answers, or it'll tell you who to contact, etc. So we must use the digital economy.
Right. Well, times have definitely changed. The COVID pandemic has thrown up many new concerns, many new initiatives, many new steps that the government has taken in order to ensure a good GDP growth, in order to ensure protection of the people. We are looking at various aspects. One of the outcomes of those measures has been the GDP growth that was announced yesterday. I'd like to thank our guests on the show for discussing all the implications of that. Bidisha Ganguly of the CII and Dr. Arvind Dr. Virmani of EGROW. Many thanks to both our guests for joining us. And viewers, that's all we have for you in this edition of In Focus. We hope you enjoyed our show. We'll be back again tomorrow with more news and information and another topic to discuss. And meanwhile, keep watching DD India as news and updates continue. Namaskar.